I want to start today by putting a phrase on the table that I guarantee every single person listening has heard, used, and probably misunderstood.
Okay.
If I tell you to listen to your heart,
hmm
what is the first image that pops into your head? Be honest.
Usually, it implies abandoning logic. It's the stuff of romance novels, big dramatic swells of music, chasing a feeling, passion.
Right.
It's almost code for do the irrational thing because it feels good.
Exactly. We culturally map the heart as the seat of emotion. If the brain is the cold, hard logic processor, the CEO, then the heart is the messy, warm, slightly chaotic emotional center.
hmm
But the stack of research and articles we are diving into today flips that entirely on its head.
It really does. I mean, it frames that common definition as not only wrong, but actually kind of dangerous to our decision making.
The central thesis we are exploring today is that heart coherence is not an emotion,
No,
it's an orientation. And that is a massive distinction.
it is. The study's material frames the heart not as a moral compass, which is another common misconception. The heart is about good versus evil, but as a directional compass.
A directional compass.
Yeah, it's purely about navigation.
I love that distinction.
Hmm.
A directional compass doesn't judge the north. It doesn't say north is good or south is bad.
It just points.
It just points.
Yeah.
It tells you where you are relative to where you need to go.
Precisely. And the definition of heart coherence that these sources give is incredibly rigorous. It's not just, I have a good vibe.
Not at all.
The source says heart coherence occurs specifically when attention, feeling, body sensation, and intention all point the same way.
That is a remarkably high bar.
Yeah.
I mean, think about the average day. My intention is to finish a project. My body is tired and wants to nap.
Right?
My attention is scrolling on my phone and my feelings are anxious.
Yeah.
That's pretty standard.
And that is the definition of fragmentation. That's how most of us operate. But the research argues that when those four vectors, attention, feeling, body, intention, when they actually align, something fascinating happens in human perception. The source uses this phrase, awareness precedes explanation.
You know before you know.
Yes. It suggests there's a distinct gap. It might be a split second, it might be longer, between sensing the truth of a situation mechanically and then having the language to explain it intellectually.
That sounds almost like a superpower or maybe something out of a fantasy novel. But the source material is adamant that this isn't mystical.
No, it's mechanical.
It's mechanical. So let's get into the how of this. If the brain isn't doing the heavy lifting in that first split second, what is?
To understand the mechanism, we have to look at the timeline of perception the source lays out. We typically think the process of understanding the world is, linear.
Right. I see data, my brain analyzes that data, I categorize it based on my past, and then I decide how I feel about it.
Data in, processing, conclusion.
That's the scientific method. That's how we're taught to think.
For the intellect, yes. But the source argues the heart works in reverse because it relies on resonance, not analysis.
Resonance.
The text makes this really crucial distinction. The mind is a database. It accumulates knowledge through experience. It is constantly comparing the present moment to the past to see if it matches an old file.
So the brain is basically a prediction machine looking backward.
Yeah.
It's saying, this looks like that time in 2014, so it must be bad. Or this looks like that win I had, so it must be good.
Exactly. It's looking for patterns in the archive. But the heart orients through resonance. Think of a tuning fork.
Okay.
A tuning fork doesn't have to think or access a database to know if a note is a C sharp. It simply vibrates when the frequency matches. It's immediate physics.
So when the source says this registration is preconceptual, it means it happens before the brain has had time to open the file drawer and find the label.
Correct. It happens before language. And because it's preconceptual, the source argues there is no argument in it. And this is really important.
No argument.
The brain loves to argue. The brain is a lawyer. It weighs pros and cons, it spins narratives, it plays devil's advocate. The heart just registers, it's binary, resonance or dissonance.
This explains that specific experience, and I think everyone has had this, where you walk into a house you're thinking of buying, or maybe you meet a new person, and you just have this instant hit.
Yeah.
You just know. And then your brain spends the next 3 days writing a pros and cons list, trying to justify what you already sensed in the first 3 seconds.
That is awareness preceding explanation in action. Your body, the tuning fork, vibrated immediately. The brain, the database, had to catch up and write the report.
But here's the problem, and I think this is where people get skeptical. I've had gut feelings that felt instantaneous but turned out to be wrong.
Sure.
Or I've had intense feelings that led me off a cliff. So how do we distinguish between this resonance and just anxiety or excitement?
That's the key question.
Because the source gives us a specific checklist of what this registration feels like, and it's not what I expected.
Right. This is where we have to look at the physics of the feeling. The source says heart coherence doesn't feel like a fireworks show. It feels like calm clarity.
A quiet yes or no.
Exactly. It describes it as a quiet yes or no.
It lists physical sensations too. Easing or tightening, forward pull or withdrawal.
Notice the mechanics of those words. Easing, tightening. They're subtle shifts in pressure. They aren't explosive.
It's almost boring compared to how we usually dramatize intuition in movies. We want the burning bush or the lightning bolt.
It can be boring. The source says this signal is accurate precisely because there is no argument in it. But, and this is the biggest pitfall the material highlights, we constantly confuse intensity with truth.
This was the section that really pulled me up short. The source distinguishes between intuition as impulse and intuition as regulation.
It's a critical separation. Intuition as impulse is often what we mistake for a sign. It's loud, it's rushing, it feels urgent. But the text wrongs that an unregulated system confuses intensity with truth.
An unregulated system confuses intensity with truth.
Oh.
That hits hard. It implies that just because I'm feeling something at a level 10 volume, just because I'm screaming inside, doesn't mean it's accurate.
In fact, often that high volume is a sign of dysregulation. It could be a trauma response, it could be anxiety, or it could just be a massive dopamine hit because you're excited about a fantasy outcome.
Right.
The source tells us that a regulated system, true heart coherence, detects fit and misfit. It doesn't get swept away.
So if I'm feeling a frantic urge to make a decision, I have to send this email now, I have to buy this now, I have to tell them off right now, that urgency itself is a red flag.
According to this framework, yes. The source gives us a list of negatives, things heart coherence does not do.
Okay, what are they?
It says it does not shout, it does not persuade, it does not rush.
It does not persuade. That's really interesting. It's not trying to sell you on the idea.
No. Think about that internal monologue we all have. If there's a voice in your head listing all the reasons why you must do this, why it's the perfect choice, why you'd be an idiot not to.
That's the mind.
That's the mind, that's the salesman, that's the lawyer again, trying to convince the jury. Heart coherence just stabilizes.
It stabilizes.
Go back to the compass image. When the needle finds north, does it vibrate wildly and scream, "I found IT"?
No, it stops moving. It settles.
It settles.
That is such a useful reality check. We live in a culture that screams, follow your passion, and we interpret passion as adrenaline. We think if we aren't vibrating with excitement, it's not the right path.
And this research challenges that directly. It suggests that a big feeling isn't always the truth. Often it's just noise. Coherence is about structural integrity.
It's about stability, not volume.
Exactly.
So if the signal is quiet and it makes you feel steady rather than high, that's the green light.
That's the signal.
Okay, so let's say we're trying to apply this. We have this concept, but how do we use it when we have to make actual life choices? The source introduces a technique it calls compass narration.
This is the practical application. Compass narration requires us to change the language we use to describe our experience. It shifts the focus from outcome to orientation.
It changes the questions we ask ourselves. Because usually when I have a big decision, I ask, is this the right choice?
Right. Is this the right career move? Is this the right partner? Those are moral or intellectual questions. They require you to predict the future. You're asking, will this turn out well in 5 years? You can't possibly know that.
And that's what leads to the paralysis. We're trying to solve a complex equation with missing variables. We freeze.
Exactly. The coherent heart asks a different question. Does this align or fragment?
Does this align or fragment? That feels more like an engineering question than a philosophical one.
It is. It's structural. Does this piece fit the structure of who I am right now, or does it break it? You don't have to know the destination to know if the step you're taking right now is on solid ground.
The source breaks down how to feel that difference, too. And again, it counters our usual assumptions. It says, alignment feels expansive without excitement.
There's that distinction again. Expansive means you have room to breathe. It feels open, but not manic.
Right.
Conversely, fragmentation feels charged without clarity.
Charged without clarity.
Yeah.
That is the perfect description of anxiety-induced decision-making. You feel like you have high voltage running through you. Maybe you're obsessing over the decision, but you can't actually see 5 feet in front of your face.
That is fragmentation. Even if the logic says this is a great opportunity, if the body is signaling charged without clarity, the compass is saying no.
Hmm.
Moving from right versus wrong to align versus fragment bypasses the need to predict the outcome. You just have to check the fit.
It sounds like it removes the pressure to be perfect
Yeah.
and replaces it with the responsibility to be present.
I think that's a fair way to put it. You stop agonizing over the perfect choice and focus on the coherent choice.
So let's say we do this. We slow down, we feel the alignment, we make the choice. What happens next? The source talks about the transition from this fleeting awareness to something called embodied knowledge.
This is where the rubber meets the road. We move from a state of sensing to a state of being. The text says, awareness precedes embodiment. You feel the direction before the lesson arrives.
You sense readiness before knowledge forms language. I love that phrasing. It's like your operating system is downloading an update in the background, but the interface hasn't changed yet.
That's a great analogy, and the definition of embodiment here is very practical. It's not abstract. It says, when knowledge is embodied, it no longer needs rehearsal. It becomes behavior.
That's the goal, isn't it? You don't have to wake up and give yourself a pep talk to be a certain way. You don't have to try to be honest or try to be disciplined.
You just are. You don't have to access the database to remember how to act. It's automatic. Think about learning to drive. At first, it's all intellectual hands at 10 and 2, cucks the mirror, ease the clutch. It's exhausting. But once it's embodied, you just drive. You don't think about the car. You think about the destination.
The source lists evidence for this state. It says it shows up as consistent choice, reduced inner conflict, and this one stood out to me, ease without avoidance.
Ease without avoidance is a crucial distinction because sometimes ease just means I'm ignoring the hard stuff.
Sure.
I'm checking out, I'm dissociating on the couch.
Right. Avoiding the problem is definitely easy in the short term.
Exactly. But this is ease in the action. It's the athlete in the zone. They aren't avoiding the game. They're in the highest pressure moment possible, but there is no internal friction.
They're fully integrated.
Fully integrated. The text calls this soul embodiment in practical terms. I appreciate that they clarify this. It's not transcendence in the sense of flowing away on a cloud to escape reality. It's integration. It means the awareness has moved through experience into stable expression. You aren't fighting yourself anymore.
But we have to talk about the flip side, because getting to that state of ease implies a learning curve. And the source has a pretty stark warning about what happens when we ignore this compass.
It talks about the efficiency of learning. And yes, it's stark. The source says, when the compass is ignored, experience has to compensate.
That sounds vaguely ominous.
Yeah.
Experience has to compensate. What does that actually mean?
It's the brick wall theory. The compass is a whisper. It says, don't go that way, there's a wall. It's a subtle signal.
Okay.
If you ignore the whisper, reality has to step in and show you the wall physically. You have to crash into it.
So the lesson gets delivered one way or another. Either you listen to the subtle signal or you eat the impact.
Precisely. The text notes that people learn the same lesson repeatedly. Why? Because they keep ignoring the orientation signal. So reality keeps sending the crash course until the lesson is embodied.
But when you follow hard coherence, learning becomes efficient.
Efficient, that's the word. Experience simply confirms what awareness already signaled. You sensed the wall, you turned, and the ease of your path confirms you made the right move. You didn't have to bleed to learn the lesson.
Now, I have to play devil's advocate here. Does this mean if I follow my heart compass, if I wait for that calm clarity, that everything becomes rainbows and sunshine? Because that sounds a little too good to be true.
It does.
It sounds like a promise of a pain-free life.
I'm glad you asked because the source is very specific about this to avoid that exact misunderstanding. It says, this does not remove challenge, it removes confusion.
That is a huge distinction.
You will still have hard days. You might be hiking up a very steep, difficult mountain. Your legs will burn, you'll be tired, the weather might be bad. That's challenge. But you won't have that draining, agonizing confusion of, am I on the right mountain? Should I be doing this? Is this a mistake?
It removes the internal argument. It removes the energy leak of second-guessing.
Exactly. It turns needless suffering into purposeful effort. If you know you're on the right trail, the difficulty is just part of the journey. If you don't know, the difficulty feels like punishment.
So the compass doesn't guarantee comfort.
Yeah.
It guarantees direction.
Correct. And for most of us, direction is actually what we are starving for, not comfort.
Right, let's bring this down to the ground. We have listeners right now who are probably driving or at the gym or cooking dinner. They're thinking, Okay, I want this navigation system. I'm tired of the noise.
Mm-hmm.
How do they access it? The source gives us a checklist for regulation.
It does. And notice how simple these are. They aren't intellectual tasks. The first one is slow the body.
Not think harder, not analyze the data, slow the body.
We talked about resonance. You can't get a clear reading on a tuning fork if you're shaking it violently. Physical deceleration helps quiet the mental noise.
You have to create a still surface for the signal to land on.
Right. Second on the list. Reduce internal argument.
Stop litigating. Stop trying to build a case for why you should do something.
Just pause the trial. If you have to talk yourself into it, you probably aren't resonant with it.
Third, notice subtle signals.
Hmm.
We're back to that list. The easing, the tightening, the quiet yes.
And remember, these are small. They are whispers.
And the last one, which I frankly think is the hardest thing to do in the modern world,
Yeah.
trust quiet alignment over loud certainty.
That requires courage. Because loud certainty feels safe. It feels powerful. I am 100% sure. Feels good, even if it's manic.
Yeah.
Quiet alignment feels vulnerable. It's just a nudge. It's trusting a feeling that has no words yet.
But the source reminds us, heart coherence is not a belief system.
No.
It is feedback.
It's data.
It's data.
And the cycle the source describes is beautiful. Awareness arrives before explanation. Experience refines that awareness, and embodiment completes the cycle.
This is how knowledge becomes lived truth. Not through force, through alignment.
That's the takeaway. You can't force yourself into wisdom. You can only align with it. It changes the way we view intuition. It's not magic. It's not a lottery ticket. It's about becoming a finely tuned instrument.
And like any instrument, it requires maintenance. You can't leave it in the rain and expect it to play perfectly.
It requires keeping the system regulated so it can actually pick up the signal.
So here is what we want to leave you with today. We've talked about the difference between the loud, rushing impulse and the quiet, stabilizing regulation. We've talked about swapping the paralyzed question of, is this right? For the structural question of, does this align?
As you go about your week, try to catch yourself when you are seeking intensity as proof that you're alive or on the right track.
Ask yourself, where in my life am I confusing high voltage for truth? Where am I addicted to the charge of fragmentation rather than the ease of alignment?
It's a subtle shift, but it changes the entire destination.
Knowledge becomes lived truth, not when we grasp it, but when we align with it. Thanks for diving in with us.
See you next time.